Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the Marin County Board of Education Forum for Candidates representing Trustee Area 4. We welcome our viewers joining us by live stream on YouTube and encourage you to engage in tonight's discussion by submitting questions to mcoe trustees at marinlwv.org. I am Maria Niggle, Director of Early Childhood and Community Collaboratives at Marin Promise Partnership. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters of Marin County for organizing and moderating tonight's event. Actually, this afternoon's event. This year, the League of Women Voters has been celebrating 100 years of following a mission to empower voters and defend democracy. Moderating candidate forums is an important part of their vision of a democracy where every citizen has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. The League is a strictly nonpartisan organization and never supports or opposes individual candidates or political parties. Marin Promise Partnerships and partners refuse to settle for a world in which a child's potential is dictated by race, ethnicity, zip code, or circumstance. We believe that together we can change this so that every child in Marin can reach their full educational potential, regardless of race, ethnicity, or family income. We promise that by 2028, we will have closed the educational equity gaps at every stage along a student's cradle to career journey. That's why more than 100 school districts, community members, nonprofits, funders, businesses, and government agencies have joined forces to work together as a county-wide, cross-sector, cradle-to-career partnership. With the support of MPP's Backbone Team staff, using the nationally recognized Strive Together collective impact framework, we are taking an anti-racist stance to break down barriers, build relationships, change systems, and improve lives. And towards this end, we are delighted to co-sponsor this forum to ensure that voters have every opportunity to make an informed decision on this important leadership role in our county. And now, I am pleased to hand the reins over to this afternoon's moderator.
Thank you, Maria. My name is Susan Stomp, your moderator for this afternoon's forum. Thank you for joining us for this candidate forum hosted by Marin Promise and featuring the candidates who are running for the Marin County Board of Education Trustee Area 4. Slide 1, please. With me is League member Pat Becker as timekeeper. Off screen, we have Greg Brockbank and Nancy Weber to review questions, and Nancy Bell and Dee Dee Butori providing Zoom support, along with a team from Community Media Center of Marin. Thank you. The League is a trusted membership organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We do not endorse or oppose candidates or political parties. In addition to promoting our voter education, the League advocates for issues and may take positions on issues that arise in ballot measures. We would like to remind everyone that the candidates have all agreed to participate under ground rules set for this forum. In order to ensure impartiality, it's the League's policy that candidate forum moderators and question review team not be actively involved in a candidate's campaign. This afternoon's forum is being live streamed on the League's YouTube channel and is facilitated through our partnership with Community Media Center of Marin. This event is also being recorded and will be available on the League website at marinlwv.org. For broader community access, a gavel-to-gavel production will be rebroadcast on CMCM-TV's Channel 30. The days and times will be posted on the League website. I would like to briefly explain the rules of the timekeeper and the question review team. To assure our candidates stay within the allotted time, they will see a box designated clock. At the appropriate time, the box will turn yellow, indicating the candidate has 30 seconds remaining for their response. The box will remain yellow for approximately 10 seconds and then will turn black. When the box turns red, the candidate should complete the sentence that they are on. You may submit your questions to the email address displayed on the screen, mcoe trustees@marinlwv.org, anytime during the forum. Our question review team is standing by to review incoming questions. I want to assure you, they do not censor questions. They simply screen the questions to avoid duplication and check for anything inappropriate. If you do not recognize your question, it might have been combined with other questions on the same topic. Due to the time constraints of this forum, we may not be able to pose all the questions that are submitted. Slide 2, please. There are 7 geographic trustee areas for the Marin County Board of Education. Area 4 includes West End, San Rafael, Ross Valley, and Kentfield school districts, with some exceptions. If this race appears on your ballot, you are in Trustee Area 4. There are 2 candidates running for 1 seat in Trustee Area 4, both of whom are with us this afternoon, Felicia Agrilius and Robert Goldman. Thank you. The candidates have been invited to make a 2-minute opening statement. After that, they will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. To be fair, I will rotate the order in which they respond to questions. For opening statements, we'll begin with Felicia. Felicia?
Hi, thank you much, Susan, and the Marin League of Women Voters, as well as Maria and the Marin Promise Partnership. My name is Felicia Agrilius. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm running for the Marin County Board of Education. My life is dedicated to improving Marin County schools and supporting the students in them. I'm currently the director of a youth program in Marin, where I am in schools across the county directly supporting students and collaborating with teachers and administrators. I am committed to educational equity, increased mental health care, and data-driven responses to student concerns. I believe that I am a leader trusted by the community and will be responsive to the needs of students, teachers, and families. I have been endorsed by the Marin County Democratic Party, the California Democratic Party, Marin and California Young Democrats, Equality California, Supervisor Katie Rice, both the Fairfax and San Anselmo mayors and multiple town council members, school board members in the Lagunitas, Ross Valley, Ham districts, and College of Marin boards, as well as the Firefighters Union and over 100 students, alumni, and community leaders. Through unstable and difficult times, I believe that you, the community, deserves a leader who is embedded in our school system with boots on the ground serving our community. I believe that I am that leader. Additionally, as the potential first LGBTQ millennial to be elected in Marin and a young woman, I believe that I bring fresh and needed energy to the board. Over the past year alone, I've provided trainings to over 1,000 Marin students and school staff on LGBTQ equity and am in active collaboration with staff members in local schools. I know what is happening in our schools, what teachers want, and what students need. I am ready, inspired, and prepared to work incredibly hard to make sure those needs are met. Thank you so much for this time, for tuning into this forum, and I'm really excited to share more.
Thank you, Felicia. Robert. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. There you go. There you go.
Okay. I'm Robert Goldman. Usually go by the name of Bob, but I'm known as both. I'm the incumbent running for re-election to the Marin County Board of Education, and I'm running basically based on my accomplishments and the years that I've served different school boards. I've been on the Marin County Board 11 years. I was on the Kentfield School Board for 16 years prior. I've worked very closely with fellow board members, ensuring an excellent education for every student in the county. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Secondary Education, Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education. I had an Ohio teaching credential. I have a lifetime California Community College teaching credential, and I have a law degree. While on the county board, we worked very hard, especially during COVID, to bring the students back to school with no issues at all. We will not open a school unless we know, and that's the County Board of Education working in daily contact with the Marin County Board of Health, that it's safe to do so. We have opened up numerous schools. We have our special schools open for students, and we're working with everybody involved to do better under these trying conditions. I've been very active in the community, and I'd like to continue working on the board to continue the great success we've had in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll have the questions, and the first question will be answered by Bob. What is the most important role of the County Board of Education? If elected, how would you help MCOE fulfill this role most effectively?
And I didn't get the last part of it. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. If elected, well, the whole question, what is the most important role for the County Board of Education? If elected, how would you help MCOE fulfill this role most effectively?
I don't know what COE is. That's
the county, Marin County Board of Education.
Okay, MCOE. Okay, I'm sorry. Right now, the most important role of the county is ensuring the safety of the students going back to school during the COVID pandemic. And we've spent a lot of time on that. The superintendent spent a lot of time on that, working with the state and the county, obtaining safety gear for the schools, humidifiers and air cleaners for the schools so that we can open them up. Television training and education is not the best for the students. They need to get back to school. And right now, that's the most important issue facing us. But the county has a lot of other issues, including overseeing the budgets of the local districts to make sure they're within the budget guidelines of the state. And we review each one every year to make sure they are in compliance.
Thank you, Bob. Felicia.
Thank you. I agree that right now during COVID, safety for students and teachers has to be a priority. I think outside of this specific moment, I guess many months moment that we're in, the Board of Education must be and can be a leader, a convener, a collaborator, and a body that inspires districts to do better and helps to give them the tools to do so. I think that the Board of Education has many specific roles around ensuring that budgets are sustainable, but I think more than that, they have an unparalleled opportunity to bring resources and best practices across districts, bring districts together to address problems that everyone in Marin County is facing, such as racial equity, issues with vaping, issues with mental health, and then make sure that districts have the tools to put best practices in place so that their students are supported. In addition to that, an important role that they have is to make sure that the county-run schools are providing equitable education. This is something that I'm really passionate about because students in the county-run schools often are students with disabilities, and I have a background in disability support services and have served on a national disability advocacy board. So I'm really passionate to make sure that students with disabilities have a high-quality education, as well as students who have been referred out of public schools by probation officers students, parole officers, et cetera, are getting racially equitable education as well.
Okay, thank you. The next question for Felicia first. Why does your experience or perspective make you a better trustee at this time in Marin's education world?
Thank you. I think the number one thing is that I have boots on the ground in schools across the county. Literally every day for my job, I'm the director of LGBTQ youth programs at the SPAR Center. I'm in conversation with students, teachers, and families. So I really have, I believe, an unparalleled understanding of what's happening on the ground in schools. I may not have deep experience on school boards with that sort of upper level looking at policies, but I am able to listen to the needs of our community and be responsive to that. And I think that it's critically important for someone who is already in touch and in connection with the community to sit on the board so that we're ensuring that the community is brought into conversations that they should be brought into and their needs are addressed. I think one of the most important things that our county has to address right now is racial equity. The George Floyd protests have really inspired a mass awakening of Marin County folks. And a lot of statistics have come out around educational disparities, both in access as well as achievement for BIPOC students, Black and Indigenous people of color, for LGBTQ students, for students with disabilities, as well as disparities across districts. So these issues have to be led by the folks most impacted by them. As an LGBTQ person, I can lead the work on LGBTQ equity. And in terms of racial equity, I am already collaborating with and in active conversation with BIPOC students and leaders, so we'll be able to bring their voices.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bob?
Would you repeat the question, please?
The question is, why does your experience or perspective make you a better trustee at this time in Marin's education world?
Thank you. My education alone, I'm a secondary education teacher. I know the schools. I have my licenses. I had my credentials. I'm very aware of the schools. I have a total of 25 years on school boards. I know the school financial situations. I know the problems with retirement plans. I know the problems with trying to fund schools today in our current pandemic. I'm natural as far as that goes. I know the education law, and that's why I think I am the best candidate for this position.
Thank you. Now you'll be answering the next question first, Bob. So how do you hold the County Office of Education accountable when the board doesn't hire the superintendent who's elected independently? What decisions does or can the board make to influence the funding allocation and policies of the MCOE? What board controlled levers can you pull to make a difference?
My time to answer now?
Pardon?
Did you finish the question?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
it.
Sorry.
A couple of questions embedded there.
Right. No, I understand. And they're very good questions because you're right. The superintendent of the county is elected. It's not like the local boards. And therefore, she sets the budget, she sets the rules and regulations. On a local school board, the superintendent's hired by the board. The board sets the policies. That's not true at the county level. So the only way we really, I don't like to use the word control, but we go over the budgets. We listen to where the expenditures are. We are asked permission to, the superintendent asks us and explains to us each and every distribution. We have the budget twice a year we get, and we go over it and we ask questions. The only way we really can control it is to ask the questions where we have doubt or questions regarding disbursements. And we do it all the time. And that's the control we have over the distribution of money.
Thank you. Felicia? unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, so Mary Jane Burke was actually one of the first folks that I reached out to after I filed papers for the election, because I know that because she's elected and not appointed by the board, collaboration between the Board of Education and the superintendent's office is absolutely critical for both pieces to do the best jobs that they can do. So I think the first thing is to make sure that there's active collaboration and board members are asking questions, doing research, talking to community members, and making sure that the education that MCOE is providing and the leadership that they're giving for school districts as a whole is as high quality as possible. Some ideas that I have around that, as Bob said, the board can approve the budget, which means that we have the opportunity to look very thoroughly at it and ensure that the places that funding is going are the places where funding should be going. Additionally, the board can open the door for community members to speak up about issues that matter to them, ask questions about the actions that MCOE is taking. There's also a huge role in making sure that county-run schools are operating as well as they can be. And for that, I would make sure I'm looking at data on student access, student success rates, talking directly to students, learning about their experiences, and then also looking at what's happening with the local control and accountability plans to see if the goals that schools are setting for themselves are being met and what work is being done there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. To our viewers, you're invited to submit questions anytime during this forum to MCOE trustees at marinlwv.org. The next question will be answered by Felicia first. And the question is, COVID-19 has changed the world of education. There are very real health and safety risks for students and teachers. How would you balance the desire to return students to their classrooms and with health and safety risks?
Yeah,
Felicia?
thank you for bringing that up. As someone who leads a youth program, I've been dealing with the same issues. Typically, I was leading support groups both in schools as well as at different locations in the community and meeting literally weekly with many students. Once COVID hit, we had to transition everything to happen virtually. And I saw how honestly devastatingly difficult it is for online education to be accessible and effective. And since then, I've both worked to ensure my program as well as schools are able to use the resources as much as possible. I think that it's important to look honestly at COVID data, what potentials are for surges in the future, and make sure that any transitions into in-person learning are happening slowly with all of the proper protective equipment and sanitation standards met. I was very concerned at the fact that teachers were protesting outside of MCOE because of their fear with COVID reopening in the summer. So making sure that all interests and everyone who's involved in school opening has their needs heard and responded to. I'm doing a lot of research on the potential of hybrid education, where some students are still doing full online learning and some students are doing full in-person learning to meet the needs of both folks who have immunodeficiencies or teachers who can't come into work, as well as the folks who online education isn't feasible for. Those are some of the main ideas that I have, but it's a difficult question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bob? You're muted, Bob.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think in my opening statement, I addressed some of this. The Marin County Office of Education from day one from the pandemic has been in daily contact with Marin County Department of Health and Dr. Willis. And every day they have meetings, they discuss what they're going to do, what the figures are. And we have been working with that department to open our schools. It's a big issue, as Felice said. It's a very, very difficult issue. We want to make sure that it's safe before any student goes back to school. And we feel, the Marin County Office of Education and Board of Education felt that it was safe enough to open schools on a limited basis. And we have all the precautions there. The teachers are all on board. All the special education classes have been open today so that the students can get learning in person. It's very difficult to do it online.
Okay, thank you. And Bob, you get to answer the next question first. Many youth and community advocates are demanding removal of the school resource officers from their schools. What is your position on this?
Am I unmuted or?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. My position is very strong. I'm a very strong proponent of school resource officers. Marin County is not like the city of Los Angeles or the city of New York, where they assign officers full-time to the schools. In Marin County, the officers are only called when needed. They know the students, they get to meet the students, they get to talk to the students. They're not there to arrest them, take them away in handcuffs. They're there to solve a problem. Recently in Novato, California, there was a robbery of a 7-Eleven store. It was solved because the school resource officer recognized the picture from the camera after the robbery, and the case was solved. They're very important. They're there to help the students, not to discipline the students. And I really think it's something we should continue. And I support it all the way. We have a grant, the county has a grant to continue it, and all they have to do is say yes. If healthcare employees can come in, but they can't solve a problem as it's happening. It has to come in after.
Thank you. Felicia?
Yeah, so I am a supporter of increased mental health resources and restorative justice practices. I believe that when students are in situations that SROs respond to in schools, it's not because of disciplinary issues, it's because of lack of resources and support. So having the SROs solving any problems that are happening isn't the solution that we need. We need more support and more resources. Additionally, you know, I listen to Black and Indigenous people of color and students who are speaking up en masse saying that the presence of SROs actively make them feel unsafe, period, hands down. And I have to be responsive to that. When you look at the disparities in discipline rates, regardless of whether the SROs are the ones putting the students in handcuffs, the presence of SROs on campus pushes schools into taking action based on discipline rather than actions based on restorative justice, as they would if they were working more closely with the Marin Youth Court, for example. Additionally, you know, there's a lot of very convincing statistics that show that SROs on campus don't have any positive impact in preventing crime, preventing shootings. In the Orlando shooting, for example, there was already an armed guard on campus when the shooting happened. So we know that SROs have a very detrimental impact both to Black and Indigenous students of color, LGBTQ students, students with disabilities. We're hearing that directly across our community as students are standing up en masse. And the reasons that SROs are brought on campus, they're not actually solving the problems that they're brought to solve anyways.
Thank you. And Felicia, you answer the next one first. Question is, COVID-19 has exposed the deep digital divide in Marin and students' access to online learning. Through efforts that have been made to provide internet access in areas like the canal, many students have probably fallen even further behind than their counterparts. What can the School Board of Trustees do to help these students make up lost ground?
Wow, that isn't where I expected the question to go. I thought it was more going to be about access to resources. So that's an incredible question to ask. I think that something that the board can do is actively research and secure additional funding for tutoring, educational support, and really specialized support for students who were left behind in the transition to online education so that they can be able to keep up and to catch up. I've been really thrilled at the work that the Canal Alliance has done, both documenting the disparities in access to electronic resources, Wi-Fi, computers, and solving those issues. So I think it'll be particularly important to collaborate with service providers and educators who are on the ground working with students who haven't had access to education and truly follow their lead. Ultimately, that's my philosophy with a lot of these things, is that I can't make decisions just as someone sitting on a board. I have to make decisions directly in response to what students need. So the first thing that I would do, find more funding to make sure that students are supported, and ask these students what they need to be able to catch up further in school, because it might not just be tutoring, it might not just be to have a computer, it might be way more than that. So making sure that their needs are responded to holistically and by their direction would be most important to me.
Thank you. Bob?
Did I unmute myself?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
You're on.
To start, we, as the Marin Office of Education, realized there was a disparity in certain areas where online learning was very difficult. And Mary Jane and the Marin Office of Education went out and worked with Bank of Marin, who gave $200,000, and with the Marin Foundation, who donated a lot of money to help get Wi-Fi into those areas. So that's just to start. I wanted you to know that we do realize there's disparity and there is issues. Now, as far as teaching them or helping them catch up, the only thing the County Board of Education would have to do with that is the Marin School, which is for children who have dropped out of regular high school and attend the Marin schools, run by the Marin Office of Education. And that's only one school, plus a few feeder schools, a few other specialized schools. Most of the catching up would have to be done by the local boards, because they're the ones whose students are either falling back or fell out, both. So they have to be the ones that are in control of bringing them back into alliance with everyone else.
Okay, thank you. And Bob, you're up for the next question to be answered first. In Marin County, we have some of the largest educational achievement and opportunity gaps between students of color and their white classmates. What would be your responsibility as an elected school board trustee to close these gaps? What action commitments are you willing to make?
Well, I can give you an actual example. The Sausalito Marin City School District. The Marin County Office of Education was watching it. They saw that people of color were falling back. There was a charter school set up. The charter school was getting all the, quote, smarter students. They were doing very well. So the Marin Office of Education stepped in with the state and the Attorney General's office. They declared it a segregated school. And they reached an agreement. They're, quote, desegregating the school. And it's all the students of color and not will be getting the same education now. So there's an actual case where the Office of Education stepped in. And that's what our job is, to oversee any issues that we see coming up in the local schools. Although we can't set the policy, we can oversee them, give them suggestions, and help them solve their problems.
Thank you. Felicia?
Yeah, so the commitment that I will make is that I will prioritize racial equity in every decision that I make on the board. I think that the educational disparities in Marin are horrific and an emergency, and we need to respond immediately and as much as possible to them. Some of the specific ways that the Board of Education can do that include analyzing data on student outcomes, making sure that school districts are looking at that data and are accountable to it, and making sure that when school boards, the Office of Education, as well as our board makes commitments to racial equity, we're following through, tracking our successes and responding so that we're actually taking action to serve students rather than just say that we're caring about equity. The data issue is really big, as we saw a lot of data come out in the summer about disproportionate discipline rates. For example, in the TAM district, where Black students make up 3% of the population, but 100% of expulsion rates. If that data is out, folks are talking about it, schools have to respond to it. So I think that MCOE can be a leader in ensuring that we're responding to that data. Additionally, we can bring up collaborations and wisdom across school districts to say, if something's happening really well in the San Rafael school district, such as taking out SROs, we can bring that sort of wisdom into other school districts, as well as just generally getting in the muck and doing the work in collaboration with service providers, organizations like Marin Promise Partnership, and students themselves.
Thank you. For viewers, reminding you that you can still send in questions. We have time for a few more questions. And you can send them in to mcoe trustees@marinlwv.org. The next question will be answered by Felicia first. What programs will you advocate to address bullying and cyberbullying?
Yeah, so this is actually a huge part of my work at the SPAR Center. I collaborate with a group of LGBTQ middle school students who, in middle schools, the amount of bullying is huge, both for LGBTQ students based on race, based on religion, based on income level. And the solutions are difficult because we have to be careful to make sure that bullies don't retaliate against the folks that they were bullying once an intervention is made. So doing a lot of research on best practices to ensure that we're pulling potential bullies into conversations about equity. I think one thing is really having more diverse curriculum starting in preschool so that folks are learning as a baseline to celebrate different identities and different folks, so that when they get to an age like middle school, when they have huge amounts of pressure to fit in, to establish themselves as better than others, they're able to fall back on that groundwork that we love and respect everybody. I think that student-led initiatives are always going to be the most successful because students are experts on their own experiences. So making sure that we are listening to the needs of students and taking action based on that will be important. I think our Student Leadership Institute honestly has been very successful because the students say, this is what needs to happen. We're going to organize a training. We're going to give a presentation to our peers and work with our school administrators to make sure that they're being responsive to bullying policies. So the number one thing that I would advocate for are student-led initiatives.
Thank you. Bob.
I'd like to explain there's state laws, federal laws, and local laws against bullying. And every year, the Marin Office of Education and the Board of Education pass resolutions upholding the state, local, and federal laws. So consequently, we are behind these laws 100%, and we won't tolerate bullying. And if we find out there's a school that has an issue and they haven't followed up on it, Mary Jane and the Office of Education will follow up with the local school to ensure that they do. But we can't go into the local school districts and tell them how to do it. We can contact law enforcement if it's not being done.
Thank you. The next question will be Bob first. And the question is, how would you reach out and partner with traditionally underserved communities and families and of running the gamut of the communities that you serve, whether which is inclusive of people with physical disabilities and limitations?
Well, there's a camp, Chance, which is run by the Marin County Office of Education in conjunction with the San Rafael Police Department, who go into the low-income areas, the underserved areas, bring students in, and they go out to Walker Creek, which is in West Marin, which is run by the Marin County Office of Education, for a week of camp or 2 weeks of camp local law enforcement, local officials, teachers, members of the Marin County Office of Education. That's how we on the county level can serve them. The other way is, as I said, we can go out and try and solicit grants and funds and use it to help support these programs.
Thank you. Felicia?
Would you mind repeating the question for me, actually?
Sure. How would you reach out and partner with underserved communities and families? And looking at the spectrum of families that the district serves, including people with physical disabilities.
Got it. Thank you. So there are two things that I want to talk about. The first is around disability support services, and then the second is about racial justice work. In terms of disabilities, I have a long history of working in disability support services and disability advocacy organizations as well. The term that I hear all of the time is nothing about us without us. And following the lead of that means that we have to listen to people with disabilities' self-determination and right to make decisions about what they need, as well as in terms of young people and students, what their families need and experience. So talking directly with them, listening to what's happening and taking action based on that. In terms of partnering with low-income Black and Indigenous people of color, LGBTQ folks, the first thing is to establish the board as an active ally, an active anti-racist board, et cetera, so that we can start building trust with these communities and not just be a force that comes in thinking that we know best. So once we take action from our own volition on these issues, then there's a lot more legitimacy to reach out to communities and partner closely. I've said this many times, but my biggest philosophy is following the leadership of those impacted. So establishing relationships with students, families, service providers who are deeply embedded in the communities that are disproportionately served would be really critical to me. These are actually relationships that I already have as well that I'll be able to leverage on the board.
Okay, thank you. And Felicia, this will be the last question. And Felicia will go first. Please describe an innovative idea or practice for the County Office of Education that you believe would move the needle to increase success for students of color. What would it take to implement it?
Could you say that one more time?
Sure. Please describe an innovative idea or practice for the County Office of Education that you believe would move the needle to increase success for students of color, and what would it take to implement it?
Thank you. Two thoughts. The first is around the Marin Community School, which is overseen by the Office of Education. I think that the work that they're doing there in partnership with nonprofits is really critical so that students who end up at the community school because of a lack of resources are getting the wraparound support that they need. So really continuing to ensure that the community school has the resources able to do that, diverse staff, enough funding, and the knowledge for providing these services would be critical. In terms of moving the needle around racial disparities in Marin schools generally, funding is something that really is important, making sure that schools have the funding. Honestly, what's coming up for me is ethnic studies curriculum and providing Black and Indigenous people of color students leadership opportunities that count for course credit. So how can these students learn about their history, activism strategies, their personal power, and get class credit for that? I was in conversation with some teachers in the San Rafael School District in Nevada that are actually developing those programs. And I think it's incredible because it's so important for students to learn about their personal power and then to be able to make change in the communities. And I think that that's one of the things that can lead to the most lasting impacts because these students are, disproportionately pushed out of systems. So pulling them back in and saying that you have agency and you have power would be the number one best thing that we can do.
Okay, thank you. Bob.
We haven't had a chance to rebut statements that have been made here, but I just want to say, in the last question, the Marin County Office of Education Board is not a racist board. And to make the insinuation that we should declare ourselves not against racism, I think is insulting. But I just wanted to straighten that out. But in answer to this question, the Marin County School on the campus of the Marin County Office of Education is fully funded and is fully staffed, and they get all the funds that they need. So, but when it comes again to oversee on local boards, we can't do that. It's just, it's not the law. We can't tell local boards what to do. But that's all I can say to answer this question. I think it is fully funded. I think we're doing the best we can. New ideas to support the other communities, that's the local boards have to do that. We can give them suggestions, but we can't enforce them.
Thank you. That concludes the question portion of the forum. Before the candidates make their closing statements, I want to share some key information about this year's election, particularly on how and when you can vote. We are fortunate to have an outstanding elections department in Marin, and it's headed by Registrar of Voters, Linda Roberts. Be assured that the counting of ballots for this year's election is being conducted with the highest level of security, honesty, and integrity. Election Day is officially November 3rd. If you've not already registered, you will have to go to the elections office to register and vote in person. Due to COVID-19 and the need to ensure safe, accessible voting, the state of California has implemented new expanding voting options. Slide 3, please. All active registered voters in California automatically received a ballot in the mail. Vote by mail ballots were mailed out to Marin County voters at the beginning of this month. Voting by mail is now underway, and it's the safest way to vote during this pandemic. You have several options for returning your completed ballot. You can send it through the US mail, postage paid. Mailed ballots must be postmarked by November 3rd and received by the elections office no later than November 20th. You can drop off your ballot in any one of the 12 secure drop boxes located around the county. A list of authorized drop box locations is included with your ballot. Please be sure you are using an official drop box. And lastly, you can hand deliver to the elections office at the Civic Center starting now, or to any polling place once they are open. Slide 4, please. If you're voting in person, note that as a result of recent legislation, there are fewer polling places for this election. Your assigned polling place is printed on the back cover of the voter information guide and sample ballot that you received in the mail. Be sure to check this before heading to the polls. Your assigned polling place may be different from past elections. There will be 29 polling places open for 4 days, October 31st through November 3rd. Masks and social distancing will be required, and a limited number of people will be allowed inside at any one time. It's also possible to vote in person at the elections department in the Civic Center during regular business hours from now until Election Day. New legislation allows processing of ballots to start as soon as October 5th, so it's already started. Vote by mail ballots are counted as they are received at the elections department. Counts from ballots received 3 to 5 days before the election will be included in the election night results. Make a plan now and vote safely. For more information about Dropbox and polling location, you can go to marinvotes.org or call 415-473-6456. Thank you. At the end of this forum, there will be a slide listing several additional websites we recommend for more information and detailed election information. And now the candidates will make their closing statements of 1 minute, and we'll go in the reverse order from the opening statement and start with Bob Goldman. Bob?
Thank you very much. And thank you again for this chance to get together. In my opening statement, I explained why I felt I was the best candidate. The experience, the volunteer work I've done, my education, my knowledge of state law, education law, I feel is, with my past record, gives me the credibility to be reelected. I also want to say that while on the county board, we did a lot of things. We redid Walker Creek so that it is now fully accessible and functional to all special needs students. It's been brought up to modern times and status. And we've also consolidated several classrooms together to save money for the budget and for the county. But that's my closing statement, and I hope that you support me for re-election.
Thank you. Felicia.
Thank you so much. So I think that the Board of Education has the potential to be a leader in answering the calls of students when they ask for their schools to do better. I have fresh eyes, connections to schools, teachers, administrators, and nonprofit organizations that I can leverage to unify Marin County in responding to the educational disparities in access and achievement facing Marin schools. We are in unprecedented times, and we need a new and committed leader. Marin County does have some of the highest rates of disparities, and that means that we have to establish ourselves as not just not racist, but actively anti-racist, where we are fighting for Black and Indigenous students of color, LGBTQ students, and all marginalized students to get the education that they deserve. This is something that I will do, and the community is recognizing me as a leader in our educational system. That's why I've been endorsed by over 100 community leaders, elected officials, and students and alum, including the Marin Democratic Party and Supervisor Katie Rice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes our forum. Thank you to Marin Promise for sponsoring it, and thank Marin Promise for inviting the League of Women Voters to help with it. It was an honor. And thanks to the candidates for participating. Thank you both very much. And to Pat Becker, who was the timekeeper, Nancy Weber and Greg Bachbank, who were reviewing the questions, and to Nancy Bell and Dee Dee Butori for their Zoom support. And a special thanks to the team at CMCM TV. We could not have done this without you. A video of tonight's forum will be posted on the League's website in the next few days. Slide 5, please. For more information about the election, the candidates, ballot measures, visit the League's website at marinlwv.org and click on the Voter's Edge logo. Here are some additional websites. Thank you. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. And most important, thank you for voting. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.